You never know how the Lord moves. I was reading an article in the Baptist Press in April of 2009 about a Baptist hospital in Nullergu, Ghana, which is, if you know Ghana, Accra, the capital, is South Ghana, and Nullergu is North Ghana, and if you drive, it takes 14 hours to get there, and if you fly, it only takes an hour. They don't have a lot of asphalt in Ghana, could I say. You might understand that. But they were looking for volunteers. Now, I'm not a medical person. I'm an extra hand. When Anita was first stationed at the Charleston Naval Hospital, we only had one car, and I'd go pick her up at night when she was working a late shift or take her in. There'd be an emergency in the emergency room where she was working. And they do their nurses thing and their doctor thing, and sometimes they don't have anybody there to hold the bag. So I became the guy that could hold the bag while they did what they did, and I didn't pass out on the floor. So I've always been around to do things like that. Amen. But so I sent an email off to Ghana and said, you know, my wife is a pediatric nurse practitioner. We have some time after school gets out in June of 2009. We'd like to come up and volunteer. And they said, come ahead. And so we updated our passports and got our flights and ended up in Accra, and then the next day ended up in Nullergu. And for a little over 2 weeks, we're a part of the missionary family in Nullergu. There were 2 doctors that were on staff that had been appointed by the International Ocean Board, and they retired, have since retired from the board, from their service there, as well as the only pharmacist that they had at the hospital as well. But they were so happy to see Anita because she could see all the kids and take care of the kids and all their pediatric problems, and the doctors could focus on the adults and the adult patients and the problems they had at that time as well. And we saw a lot. There's just no way to describe how blessed we are with the facilities that we have available. Amen. They don't have an x-ray machine, they have an ultrascan. Okay, that's it. So they can't x-ray anybody, but they can run their ultrascan, and that's the only way they had to look inside the body of the patients that were brought in so they could decide what needed to be done. We're still attached to Kaiser, and Kaiser makes sure that before you go, your shots are all updated, and you have anti-malaria pills to take every day, and several cans of off. You have to buy those yourself. And so we did. And the only way they have of getting a lot of their supplies is by stuff coming from the United States by people that are going to volunteer. And they're always doctors and folks who are volunteering to go, and willing to pay the luggage for extra checked boxes. And we discovered that that hospital is known throughout Ghana because all of the boxes that we took that were labeled Baptist Medical Center Nullergu, they never questioned what was in those boxes. When we went through customs, they never questioned it. They knew where it was going, and they trusted the people that were taking it, that there was no contraband in it. And that's the reputation. That hospital is 60 years old now. It was started by a missionary and his wife, and his son became the medical director after him. We had some marvelous worship services on Thursday nights. Visiting families from other denominations and doctors would come in. We had a family from the Netherlands or Belgium, I'm not sure which. But Dad played the piano and led worship, and he was a medical surgeon. And all the 4 girls, and they all played instruments or sang. It was a blessing to be there with those people. Really a blessing. July begins the malaria season. And of course, the most susceptible are the children. There's 123 beds in the hospital, and 30 of those beds are all pediatric beds. And before we left, on the 12th of July, every one of those beds was filled by a child with malaria. And most of the time, transportation are your own 2 feet. People have to walk hours to get there.
Days.
Huh?
Days.
Yeah, sometimes days. And if you have to travel a long distance and you suddenly realize your child has come down with malaria, it's very challenging to get to the hospital in time to have that child treated. If you do not know what malaria does, adults, it's not as bad. For a little baby with a developing brain, malaria superheats your blood. And that will fry an infant's brain. And there was a child that was in the pediatric bed. His mother was there with him all day and all night. And he was on a drip, IV drip. But technically he was brain dead. And they were just waiting for his heart to stop so they could bury him. And that's what the pediatric ward looks like in July up there. And they don't have the medications and access to that we have. We're so fortunate to have here. So it was really an eye-opening experience for us to be there. Every morning before I went to meet with the other chaplains. There was a wonderful, sweet fellow called Chini. And he'd meet me at the front door of the cabin we were staying in. He'd always want to have prayer at the beginning of the day. And we'd hug each other and pray together before the day began. And he's still there. I've seen some pictures. He's still there, sweet guy. But Anita worked with children. She worked with newborn mothers who had newborns, and learning how to feed them properly, give them good nutrition, so that they could raise their children to be strong. It's a very much Muslim country as well as a Christian country. And there were Muslims present there every day. But nobody was angry at anybody. They were just thankful that there were medical facilities there in their part of the country that they could go to and rely on for the best treatment possible, given those conditions. And it only cost them the equivalent of $5 for medications, for surgery, whatever their need was. And every morning there would be 300 to 400 people there to be seen. And the doctors didn't go home, and the nurse didn't go home, nurse practitioner did not go home until every patient that came had been seen by the end of the day. Nobody was left for another day. We did not meet them. Heidi has been there for about 2 years, 2.5 years now, and she's the only appointed staff member by the IMB to serve there. And her husband is the facilities manager. And maybe we'll get to see them again sometime and get to meet them. But that was really a life-changing experience. I'm always touched by kids. I love kids. Somebody very near and dear to me has said I'm just a big kid. She's sitting here today. She knows that. I was touched this week. If you heard about the 5-year-old boy that died in the hands of a Santa Claus, maybe. And I saw his testimony, because it's on the internet, it's gone viral. And how touched he was to hold in his arms till that little child breathed his last. And the guy could not stop crying for how it touched his heart. Just to be the last one that child would see before he passed away. But children are so much fun sometimes. Mike's going to run a video for you, and I want you to pay attention to the kids. Mike?